I'm back in the US of A after 10 days in Europe, which were magical. They were amazing. I love Europe so much. But it also does feel good to be home. So there is that. But over 20 countries in the last 3 years. Over 20 countries in the last 3 years. Actually, that's not true. It's only been 2 years and we've hit 20 countries. Yeah. Over my lifetime, I think I've been to 26 or so, and actually next year I'll hit 30 countries, maybe more. And I'm just so grateful that I get to go to all these places and experience all these things. But why we are here today is because there is a lot that I've learned from traveling so much. Both domestically and internationally, but mostly internationally because I think that is where everyone gets a little nervous, as you know, which is normal. You get nervous to do anything that you don't do on a regular basis, so it makes sense. But I do think that I have learned a lot, so I wanted to share some of those things with you in case you're planning any sort of trip, domestically, internationally, to your local, anywhere. Okay, I don't know where I was going with that sentence. These tips don't apply if you're going to a local neighborhood. I'm not going to lie to you, but that's okay. So without further ado, let's jump into some of these tips, tricks, and all the things you need to know for traveling. Today I'm drinking a fat iced latte, okay? And I missed a good iced latte while I'm in Europe. Coffee is very, very different everywhere around the world. Okay. It's not like it is in America, unless you're going to Starbucks. There are Starbucks quite literally everywhere. So if you need a piece of home, a little bit of comfort, you do have Starbucks available to you, just like McDonald's. And Matt is such a picky eater that for the first several trips that we've taken, he did go to McDonald's in pretty much every country. I think about half the countries we've been to, he has found a McDonald's to go to. And even the McDonald's, though, have little interesting nuances to them and differences, like in the menu, but especially in the prices, my gosh. But he has been to probably at least 10 or 12 McDonald's in different countries, and he loves it. And Starbucks is usually pretty consistent, though, I will say. They have like the same menu everywhere. But if you're getting coffee internationally, coffee always looks differently, especially because something that I love to do is try the coffee that's well known for that area, that region, or what the locals drink, because it's just fun. And not a lot of people drink a big old latte, especially iced while in Europe. So that's what we're drinking today. Just some brown sugar. Brown sugar creamer from Trader Joe's. I'm back on that. I don't know why. I always forget about it for like a solid 6 months, and then all of a sudden I'll see it again and I'm like, wait, I love this so much, and I'll buy it again and it'll be my obsession for the next 3 months. So we're back on that. But anyways, this last trip was so fun because I think it finally clicked in my head and in Matt's head that we actually are good at traveling now. We actually kind of have it down, like a system, not just between the two of us, although that's there, but like a real understanding of travel now, which has taken multiple experiences and trips to get to this point. And it's amazing. It's really, really amazing. And so I wanted to share some of that with you because it was so overwhelming, the idea of going on our first international trip. And then even a few after that, it was just a lot. There are a lot of things going around in your head of like, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? Which there should be. You should have an idea of what can and can't happen. But then there's also a lot of like misinterpretation out there, and a lot of people who will tell you things that they have heard that are simply not true. And it's very funny to me how everyone is very convinced that whenever you travel overseas, it's super dangerous. And I'll call him out, my dad. He won't care that I say this, but he has always been someone who is like, I don't ever want to leave America. Like, I want to stay here. I don't really have an interest in going. He's like, there's so much danger out there. Like your luggage will get lost. I could catch a disease, like all of these things. He's very concerned about those things. And so he really didn't love the idea of us traveling as much as we do. He's definitely come around to it now, knowing firsthand experiences instead of just horror stories that have been passed around. And there are horror stories, don't get me wrong. Bad things happen, but bad things also happen in your own neighborhood, right? Like just because you're overseas, it does not mean you're all of a sudden 100% going to have something bad happen to you. It's just the world we live in. And so you get to choose where you are to experience the highs and the lows. Okay. It's a give and take. So anyways, just know that it is not nearly as dangerous as I think a lot of people will try to make you think it is. There's a lot of misconceptions, and there's things that you should do to protect yourself, right? The same way that I am not going to go back home to Chicago and walk around certain areas by myself at night. You're not going to be doing that when you're overseas. And it's the same. Like practice safety. I'm not saying be stupid, but also don't live in a place of fear, right? And that kind of goes into like the first main tip that I have for you, which is to really research your destination, because there is a level of just confidence that you're able to walk around with when you know what you're doing. When you have a general idea of where you're going, of what you want to do while you're there, areas to avoid. And trust me, there are tips quite literally everywhere. I love to look at TikTok and Lemon8 for travel guides. The people that have actually been there, actually experienced it, are going to help you a lot more than listening to people who have never been and who are just passing along exaggerated stories, right? And I've been to the Middle East, okay? And I'm not saying everyone should go to the Middle East, but I am saying that it's not nearly as crazy. And I know someone who she lives in America now, but she lived in the Middle East for years and years and years. And she always says aspects of it were safer there than it is here in America. And when I was over in the Middle East talking with one of the amazing people that we met, he said, my family was terrified for me to fly into Chicago because they thought for sure that the gangs or the police officers were going to kill me. Like, that's their conception of America, is that it's so incredibly dangerous. Yet we all live here and most of us aren't thinking twice about it, right? So it's the same way. You just have to really immerse yourself in what's going on over there, though. So I do look up like things to do, places to eat, what to try, all of that on TikTok and Lemon8. But then I will also do a deep dive onto customs, culture, and etiquette. Different things, it's just important to know, especially on like tipping systems, because we come from America, or if you're listening to this anywhere else, if you're coming to America, whatever, Americans tip, and it's expected to tip often for any service that you are receiving. But then in different cultures, if you tip someone, it's a little bit of a like slam, like, why did you just give me extra money? Like, this is my job. Respect that. You know what I mean? It's a different take on it. So even little things like tipping, all of that, look into weather. That is so important. Know the weather that is going to be happening while you're there, or the rough estimate of what weather usually looks like while you're there. That's going to help you so much, not just for packing purposes, but also just so you can kind of set your expectations. Okay, when I go to Italy, is it going to be 95 degrees or is it going to be 40 degrees? You know what I mean? Like, just look into the weather a little bit. I also personally do love to look at any sort of political climate updates, meaning, are they in the middle of an election season? Are there any major protests scheduled? Are there any wars happening? Anything like that, you'll know if there's a travel advisory when you book your flights. Like, there are some places that I do travel to that have a travel advisory on them, where it'll say like, hey, this is what's happening. There's a risk here, whatever. It's good to know. But at the same time, I do just love to know, are we dealing with a president, or are we dealing with some sort of king or parliament or whatever the situation is. It's just good to know. And I love to do this so that way I learn. I'm actually learning about the culture I'm visiting instead of just showing up, taking pictures at the places that look the prettiest for Instagram and then just being done with it, right? Like there's that aspect of it that is just really, really cool and important. So that is some pre-trip research that I love to do. And we're really starting with all of our pre-trip stuff. I should have mentioned that. We're doing pre-trip right now. Then we'll do like the actual trip of what you can be doing. Okay. So now let's talk about documentation. This is really, really important because a lot of these things I did not know actually for probably the first couple of trips that I took. And I've just learned slowly throughout this time. Okay. You have to make sure your passport is valid for 6 months beyond past when you get back. Okay. So like, let's say you're getting back in June, your passport needs to be good through December. Okay. And the reasoning for that is if something happens where you are detained or you do have to stay in that area for whatever reason, think of people who got stuck overseas for COVID or something like that, your passport cannot expire. If your passport expires, there is a lot of problems that you have to try to rectify, and it's a massive pain in the butt, very risky, all the things. Your passport is your lifeblood over there, okay? You need your passport. So as far as passports go, right now, it is a little bit of a slower process to get a passport, either file for a new one or get a new one updated with like a new name or address or whatever. The passport process is slightly tedious in my opinion, but they are good for like, oh gosh, I think it's like 10 years maybe. So they last a long time. And you have to order your passport at least ideally 3 months before you leave, because it usually takes 8 to 16 weeks. So your minimum cutoff for ordering your passport has to be like three months. Ideally, way before that. Okay, way before that. And your passport is going to be what gets you in and out of countries. Now, the way Europe works for a lot of it is that they have open borders, which means you're not showing your passport at every single border crossing. But for a lot of countries, you do have to show your passport at the border crossing and both directions, right? So when I was in Morocco, I got stamped going in and then I got stamped going back out, right? So that's the way that kind of works. And it's just their way to track you. And they're going to ask you questions at Border Patrol like, why are you here? What are you here to see? Are you buying anything? They're making sure that you're not smuggling things. They're making sure that you're not there for weird intentions and purposes. There are certain places that they want to know what my job is. And they want to know what I do for work and why I'm there and all of that. And that's, you just answer honestly. Honestly, I get nervous every single time I get like, it's not an interrogation, but I get questioned by Border Patrol or agents. It makes me nervous, but also at the same time, like, okay, just answer the questions honestly and you'll be okay. So your passport needs to stay with you, honestly, most of the time. Okay. Here's why I say that. Let's say someone does break into your room and steals your passport. You now have to go to the American embassy. It is a whole process. It is very, very tedious. You need your passport with you. So if you're doing like a backpacking situation where you're going through to lots of countries, all of this stuff, do keep your passport with you as far as like either on, like in a fanny pack or something that's like on your body, very close, not in a back pocket, not somewhere that can easily be stolen. I mean, you just want to keep the passport with you. If you're going somewhere and you're staying in like a room for a long time, like you have a week in Lake Como in Italy, well, then you're going to want to put the passport in the safe and you're going to want to make sure that it is like secure the whole time. You don't necessarily need to carry it with you then if you're not traveling to and from different countries. Okay. So that's the passport situation. But then you have a visa for certain countries. Okay. So what this means is a visa is when the country requires you to fill out an application to come into that country. You can't just walk in, you can't just book a flight and just show up. And they're usually pretty clear, but I will always do a double check Google search like, hey, does Belgium require a visa to come in? No? Great. And then you're good to book your flights. but there are certain countries that do require you to apply in order to schedule your vacation. They want to know why you're coming. They want to know all of that information to make sure that they're keeping their country safe and doing what they need to do. So always check to see if a visa is required. They usually, depends on the country really. I try to schedule all my visas out at least a month if possible. They're usually done before that, but you do have to have your exact trip dates already planned. So it's not something that you can necessarily do like a year out unless you're super organized, and it's not something you want to be doing the day of because they might not come in time. Okay. So that's really important. I also will take pictures of important documents like my passport, visa, insurance, all of that. And then I will keep that in my phone. And then for my first couple trips, I also made digital copies on paper and then kept that in our luggage. Just in case something happens, it would make the process at the embassy a lot easier. You know, I do like to know where the closest American embassy is, but I've never gone and I've never had to deal with that. And it's something you can quickly search and find or talk to people about. So, that's just some of the documentation side of things. Okay. As far as health goes, you should be checking if there's any vaccinations that are either A, required, or B, just recommended, depending on where you're going. Whenever I was younger, I used to think you only had to get like malaria vaccinations if you were going to Africa. That's not true. There are vaccinations that are recommended for all sorts of different places and countries, especially where the mosquitoes are bad, because mosquitoes carry a lot of diseases. And as someone who's traveling to a new area, you probably don't have any sort of immunity built up to that disease. So if you get bit, it could be worse for you than it would be for locals. And so it's smart to just check. I don't always get every single vaccination that they suggest, but especially with like the vaccinations required for us to do foster care, you know, there were a lot of things that we had to go get done. And I just have more of them because I do travel so much. And I want to make sure that while I'm there, I'm not sick, whether I'm traveling for work or for just fun. Especially if they're prescriptions that you like actually need to be taking every day. Keep those with you. Do not put those in your checked bag. But that brings me to my next point, which don't check a bag. Okay. This is probably my most controversial tip because everyone says they can't do it. But trust me, you can. Okay. Pack lightly. First of all, those 5-inch heels that you are bringing, you're not going to wear them. I'd just be so for real right now. You're not going to wear them. They are uncomfortable. Europe, Africa, Asia, soon to be South America. I will keep you posted on South America. All of them involve a ton of walking. Not so much just like heel time. Okay. So comfortable shoes. Honestly, you need 2 shoes, one you're wearing at the airport. So pack one. Like I'm not even kidding. That's all you need. Keep it light. Keep it really, really light. You don't need your 20-step skincare routine because you just simply won't have time to use it. You just simply won't have time to use it. So pack light. Versatile clothing is the best, which means like stack your clothes. I keep all of my clothes when I travel usually in neutral tones, so that way I can change out the outfits as much as I want. Everything is stackable. It's just helpful. Do be careful of cultural norms. There are certain places that I have been. I was dress coded at the Vatican. And there is nothing quite as embarrassing as having the guards come up to you at the Vatican and give you a sheet to cover my collarbone. Okay. So you're not supposed to have your shoulders showing. Well, the edges of my shoulders weren't showing because it was like a cap sleeve, but it was like a lot of collarbone, and it wasn't like a lot of anything else, but it was just like a lot of collarbone. I can show you guys the outfit. It really wasn't that bad, but I did get dress coded at the Vatican. Yeah. So anyways, I highly suggest that you just look at what you need to be wearing, especially if you're going to be going to religious sites. If you're going anywhere near Israel, if you're going anywhere near temples, or yeah, anything like that, just pay attention. Okay. So anyways, essential items. Let's talk about those. Power adapter. Did not know this for my first trip. Honestly, this is huge. On Amazon, they have a power adapter for most of the world. There are a few places in the world that have like random outlets. That is something I did not know. Outlets around the world are different than the ones in America. They're all like, they're different. They're totally different. And not everywhere has like a USB port. Most places will have a USB port. So you'll be okay. Like if you're on long plane rides or bus rides or whatever, they usually have a USB. But the actual port that you plug into the wall is different in most countries. So I have a world adapter. I think it was like maybe 30, $40. And it's a plug that has the American adapter, like American plugs on it with the USBs, and then an interchangeable other side that changes for the wall outlet depending on what country you're in. Okay. Very, very different. This is an essential. I highly suggest this. Same with a portable charger, because in the day and age we're in, you do not want your phone dying. You don't. This is not for your headphones. This is not for your laptop or your Kindle. This is like for your phone. You do not touch this portable charger unless your phone needs it, because you're going to be using all of the apps that I'm about to tell you about. And you really cannot let your phone die. Because let's say you do need to get to the embassy. Let's say you do run into a problem and you need to call local law enforcement. Like any of that, you need your phone. So this is not a portable charger for leisure. This is a portable charger for emergencies. Keep that with you with your passports, okay? And then you can recharge that with your wall outlet when you get back to whatever you're staying in, okay? So that's very, very important. I do like to have a reusable water bottle with me. Usually I will bring a foldable one. Foldable water bottles are, I don't know why they're not talked about more, honestly. So helpful, especially for traveling. If you're trying to fit carry-on only, especially, because usually you get a carry-on and a personal item. Mind you, carry-on and personal item. So you have 2 bags. It will fold up quickly, fit in wherever you need it to go. It's like collapsible, and then you just pop it open, and then you can get water. Be careful you get water. I usually will get water at wherever I'm staying, like the hotel or something. You are charged to drink water there. So like they don't bring free water at like restaurants, or you can't like get free water at a restaurant, right? Like it's the cost of a drink, and it's always bottled. The only place where I say that is different is Switzerland, because you're up in the mountains usually, and the tap water is actually cleaner than most this is crazy, than most bottled waters. Okay, that's how clean the water is, and it's amazing. So like I drank so much water from like fountains and tap and all of that in Switzerland, and everyone was like, yeah, it's just what you do here because it's so clean. And I have never had fresher water than I did in Switzerland. But if you're not in Switzerland or up in the mountains where you're getting fresh like glacier water, you need to be very careful where you're consuming water. So having that with you where you know you're getting safe water is very important. I do have all travel size toiletries. So that way, again, I keep that in my carry-on and I have it with me. I'm not worried then about lost luggage. I'm not worried about anyone not having my luggage at the airport. There are certain times where a flight, if you have a layover, they will not put your bags on your next plane. Okay. You have to go find your bag. So pray you have a short layover. You have to go find your bag, recheck it, go through security, and then get on your next flight while at the airport. Okay. That again, just stick with the freaking carry-on. It's so much, it will make your life so much easier. Okay. So that's my pre-travel list for you of like all of that. We're going to go to during travel. Gosh, this is getting long. I'll try to speed this up. First of all, airport. Arrive to the airport early. I don't care what you say to me right now about how it's a waste of your time. Missing your flight that you paid hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for should not be an option for you. International flights, the average time that they recommend is 3 hours. And there have been times where I have needed the full 3 hours. Flights are canceled. Flights do change. There is a reason why you need to get there that early. And when you're doing international flights, there are extra steps you have to take than just security. So you go through security. You also have to go through customs/passport control, which is usually a very long line. And it's not always as seamless as just getting your stamp on your passport. Because again, people are asking you, how much money did you spend? Are you bringing anything back with you? Do you have any food with you? All of those are questions that they're going to be asking you. You have to have time to sit in that line, have those questions asked, answer them honestly, and then move forward. Now think of a massive line full of people who speak all different languages, all different cultures, standing in front of you, also needing to answer those questions. Give yourself 3 hours, okay? That's just essential. Again, I'm just going to say it one more time. All of your necessary documents and all of your necessary medicines and things like that need to stay with you in your carry-on if for some reason you decide to check a bag, which you shouldn't. Stay hydrated. The day before you take a long flight, drink electrolytes. Liquid IV immune boosters are what I love for this, because the long flights, they're very drying to your skin. You're not necessarily wanting to drink a ton of water because you are going to have to get up and go to the gross airplane bathroom so many times. So just make sure that you're really hydrated 48 to 24 hours before the flight, because that's when it will really help you stay healthy on those flights. Okay. And then try to stand up, move around a little bit. Most of these flights are going to be around 11 to 15 hours. So unless you're going to like Japan or Australia, then they get longer, but 11 to 15 hours on average. And so stand up, stretch your legs, move around a little bit. It'll help prevent the stiffness. Some people wear compression socks for this. I've heard really good things about that. I never put a sleep mask on because my sense of safety will never allow me to put a sleep mask on. I will always feel like someone's like doing something if I have a sleep mask on. But some people love them. I don't use earplugs either, because again, I feel like I need to stay aware of what's happening. I get a little claustrophobic on planes, so the idea of closing my eyes and closing my ears and not being able to hear stresses me out. I can't do that. So highly suggest, if you need that, bring it, but also stay aware on flights. Okay. Communication. Notify your bank and credit card if you're doing an international trip, so that way they don't block purchases while you're there. So there should be, if you have the app for credit cards or anything like that, a place where you can just say like, you click on it and you say alert of travel or travel alerts or something like that. And then you just tell them what countries you're going to, a rough estimate of dates, and then they won't block any charges coming in. That's really important. Purchase a international phone plan. Fun fact, your American phone plan does not cover international phone usage. So if you don't have a phone plan purchased, you should still be able to make calls and texts most of the time, but you're going to get charged like $20 a minute for your phone calls and like $2 per text you send and receive. So if you're in a group chat and they're blowing up your phone, you're getting charged for each one of those texts. So I highly suggest getting the international plan. This will also allow you to have 5G or whatever sort of internet service outside of Wi-Fi. And that's going to be really important for all of the apps I'm going to tell you about. So that's important for communication. And then also learn basic phrases in the local language. About a week before I'll go, I'll usually look at what the average language is spoken. Usually English is one of them, so you're fine. But I'll also look up basic phrases and teach myself them, how to say hello, good morning, good afternoon, where, can I have a menu? Can we sit here? Where is the bus? Basic things like that. And then I'll have them in my notes app. So that way I can quickly reference them throughout the day. Please, thank you. All of those things are important to know. I also will do a code with my family. This might be overkill, but I swear I love this step. There is a specific code, and I will not say what it is, but there is a specific code that if I call my family and I say to them this code, then they know that it is me actually, and that whatever I'm about to say is true. So why I do this is because there are scam artists that go around that will have, especially with the rise of AI, they could call using my voice, especially because I have a podcast and I'm active on social media, and it'll say, Mom, I got stuck in Libya and I need $10,000 to get out. Can you please send it to me as soon as possible? They'll make it sound like I'm crying. They'll do this whole setup. And obviously that's not me. But also at the same time, if something does happen and I do need assistance in whatever capacity, I want them to know it's actually me that is calling. Like it is me. So we have a code, and it's a random crazy code. And if I say that, whatever I'm about to say means it is truly me. And she can also say like, hey, what's the code? If I were to call crying saying I need assistance while I'm overseas. Honestly, this is something that I could probably do right now too. It's not just for overseas trips. So highly suggest someone at home has a code with you, so that way whoever you think you would need to get in contact with for assistance, there's just proof that it's genuinely you. Okay. So when you get there upon arrival, Local transportation, definitely research on TikTok, Lemonade, all of those, what the average use of transportation is around. But as a standard rule of thumb, I usually use Uber, obviously. You can get local taxis through Uber where it's still a metered system, but they'll help you order and pay. So that way it's just safer. Ubers are obviously expensive, but the taxi drivers, if you're just paying like straight up with them, they will sometimes try to take advantage of you and say like, oh, that was a $60 drive. And you're like, oh, well, guess what? I looked it up and the law is that you cannot charge me over €2 per mile or whatever it is. You know what I mean? You just know the local rules and customs and where they try to take advantage and not. And if you can, stick with Uber because it will just help keep things safer. I do also, if I'm going to take a bus, love the Flixbus. They're owned by Greyhound or partnered with Greyhound, whatever, here in America. Very reputable. I am obsessed with them because they do long distance buses. So when we were going from Venice, Italy to Slovenia, Ljubljana, Slovenia, we took a Flixbus and it was about $100 when it transferred over, and we were able to be on a bus for 6 hours in total, 3 hours there, 3 hours back, and it was perfect because it was safe, had Wi-Fi, it had a bathroom, super super easy, and we didn't have to worry about transportation. We were able to just jump on a bus and go to a whole new country we'd never been to. So Flixbus is amazing, highly suggest them. And then Uber for local transportation, very nice. But honestly, I walk everywhere. I really do. I walk everywhere. And then just be cautious using a random taxi on the side of the road. I don't suggest doing that. At least go through a reputable local company if you're going to be doing that. Okay. When it comes to where you're staying, you really do want to look at reviews, obviously, and then also make sure the area that it's in. So Google Street View is what I will always use for that. So example, Matt was in charge of booking our hotel in Athens. It ended up being it was a great hotel. It was perfect. I loved it. But one street over was known as Gentleman's Paradise, and it was full of sex clubs and all sorts of strip clubs. So I was like, this isn't great. Like, I don't love being this close to it. And actually right below our balcony was a club, like right below us. So, again, super nice hotel. It was great. It was whatever. But, maybe if we had done a street view, we wouldn't have stayed there when we were in Athens, right? Like, we would have maybe adjusted a little bit. So always street view on Google. That's helpful. And then as far as the room security, hotel safes are usually pretty good. Make sure the doors and windows are always locked on everything. If you're solo traveling or if you feel unsafe, put something in front of the door. Maybe even that would you just hear if someone was trying to get in. That's helpful. A safety tip that was given to me by someone I met in Europe when we first went, a tour guide, was that leave your TV on while you're gone throughout the day, because it sounds like someone's occupied in the room, and always have do not disturb on the door. If you're staying somewhere less than a couple of days, like always have the do not disturb on and leave the TV on while you're gone. So that way it just appears like someone's in there. And that's just like a helpful little tip that I highly suggest you listen to. You will have to usually in Europe put your room key in a little slot in order to turn the lights on, the air conditioning, and to access electricity. So if you walk in and you're like, oh, my lights are broken, just slide the little key in. And that's a couple hotels in America too, but just a heads up, there is usually a slot that you need to put that in. As far as safety goes, we kind of talked a little bit about like the code, making sure you keep everything with you. I love a good fanny pack on these trips because it keeps things right in front of me where I can see. Don't have a backpack on that you can't necessarily feel. Nothing in back pockets, honestly, even front pockets, I try to avoid if possible, because there are pickpockets out there that can, they're skilled. They're talented. Okay. Let me just say that. And so make sure you have everything on you, in front of you where you can see it. I do love a good phone wallet. So this is a wallet that, like, it's a phone case that has a little zipper on it, phone wallet situation. I get mine lined with the RFID. I don't know if that's the exact words, but, the reader. So if someone is walking by, they can't scan my credit cards. I keep 2 credit cards with me, a Visa and a MasterCard. Visa is usually what will be accepted by credit card places. MasterCard, sometimes, Discover basically never. So Visa's my most common. So I will have my Visa with me and a MasterCard, and then I will also have my ID with me, some form of ID, just to make sure. And so I will bring my driver's license with me, not for driving, obviously, but in case I do need to go to the embassy, I have some form of American ID with me if I'm not bringing my passport. And then when it comes to currency in the area, usually you're talking about like euros, maybe shekels, like yens. I don't know if I'm saying that one right. But anyways, there's lots of options. Rule of thumb, you should probably go to the ATM and pull out a little bit at least to have with you. When we first went, I think we did 200, way too much. We had so much left over. It was not needed because we do pay card for almost everything. And you get good travel points on that. And again, your credit card's alerted. It's all good, but at least a little bit. So that way, if you want to pick up a postcard or, you want to do something on a smaller scale, you're not necessarily having to use your credit card for that. So that's helpful. And then as far as the actual trip itself, if you're in Europe, don't be afraid to go down alleyways because they're genuinely like paths used to get to different roads where like I would never go down an alley in Dallas, Texas, right? Like I'm not going down an alley, but I would go down an alley in Italy or London. You know what I mean? Like there's just a lot to explore. And so be open to it, be open to new foods, new experiences. We have discovered some of our absolute favorite foods that we would have never tried if we had stayed in America. There are certain like desserts that are in Slovenia that will blow your mind. And there's a sandwich shop that if you're ever in Lucerne, Switzerland, my gosh, you have to go because the fries there are insane. And so just try new things, be open to it, be respectful to local customs. Do know that a lot of people don't enjoy having their picture taken and they will get very angry with you. That's happened to me multiple times in just like being a content creator while I'm filming. There are certain areas that they do not like their picture taken. And so their best bet is honestly not to take pictures of people. Stick to scenery, stick to pictures of you, selfies, whatever you want. But try to be respectful of people around you. And also be flexible. Be prepared that there will be changes in your plans, whether that is weather, whether that's construction on a certain road, or maybe something's closed that you are really looking forward to. I had a full-blown meltdown in Paris, an absolute meltdown. And it was a lot because I had this vision of sitting at a cafe looking at the Eiffel Tower, getting that really thick hot chocolate and dipping my croissant in it. I had this vision. I just wanted to do it so badly. Well, it was like a 4-hour wait at the famous cafe that cost like $45 for a hot chocolate. It was ridiculous. And everywhere else just like felt like not it. And I was a pain in Matt's butt because I had this vision and I wasn't flexible. And I ended up like wrecking a solid hour of our time in Paris because I could not get over not having it exactly how I wanted. But then we ended up finding this cute little cafe, sat down, had a little breather moment, and then had a lovely rest of our day. And actually, the entire wait staff, not the entire, I'm sure there were more, but several waiters came out and asked me if I was the famous actress in the movies. And I was like, oh no. And they're like, I think you are. They said, we know you, we recognize you. And I was like, I'm really not famous. Very funny, very funny. Probably one of my favorite things that happened in Paris. But anyways, just embrace the unexpected because those are the best stories. They always will be. And even if it's stressful in the moment, it's still beautiful in the scheme of life, So my voice is like hurting from talking so much about this. This is longer than our usual episodes, but I really wanted to just pack this full of, so many tips, hacks, must-knows, all of those things. And I hope this helps. If you're planning a trip, if you're not, you should. This is your sign. This is your sign to plan a trip, have fun, and embrace it.